भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, entitled Creation, Chapter 7, The Son of Drona Punished, text number 44. Sarahasyo dhanurvedaha sabisargopasamyamaha sabisargopasamyamaha astragramascha bhavata sikshito yad anugraha Sarahasya dhanurvedaha
Saharasya sanurvedaha
Sabisargopasamyamaha
Savisargopasamyamaha
Astragramascha bhavata
Astragramam cha bhavata
Sikshito yadanugraha
Shikshita yadganugraha
Sarahasyo dhanurvedaha
Saharasya sanurvedaha
Sabisargopasamyamaha
Savisargopasamyamaha
Astragramascha bhavata
Astragramascha savata
Sikshito yadanugraha
Shikshito yad anugraha Saha rahasya dhanurvedaha
Sarahasyo dhanurvedaha
Sasvargo upashamyamaha
Sabisargopasamyamaha
Astragramascha bhavataha
Astragramascha bhavata
Shikshito yad anugrahat
Sikshito yadanugraha
Sarahasyo dhanurvedaha
Sarahasyo dhanurvedaha
Savisargo pasamyamaha
Sabisargopasamyamaha
Astagramascha bhavata
Astragramascha bhavata
Shikshito yadunagrahataha
Sikshito yadanugraha
Sarahasyo dhanurvedaha
Sarahasyo dhanurvedaha
Savisargopasamyamaha
Sabisargopasamyamaha
Astragramascha bhavata
Astragramascha bhavata
Sikshito yad anugrahat
Sikshito yadanugrahat. Matajis.
Sarahasya dhanurvedaha
Sarahasyo dhanurvedaha
Savisargopashamyamaha
Savisargopasamyamaha
Astragramascha bhavata
Astragramascha bhavata
Sikshito yad anugrahat
Sikshito yadanugrahat
Sarahasyo dhanurvedaha
Sarahasyo dhanurvedaha
Savisargopasamyamaha
Savisargopasamyamaha
Astragramascha bhavata
Astragramascha bhavata
Sikshito yad anugrahat
Sikshito yadanugrahat. Anybody online? Sarahasyo dhanurvedaha Sabisargopasamyamaha Astragramascha bhavata Sikshito yadanugrahat Sarahasyo dhanurvedaha Sabisargopasamyamaha Astragramascha bhavata Sikshito yadanugrahat. Synonym: Sarahasyaha, confidential. Dhanu Vedaha, knowledge in the art of manipulating bows and arrows. Savisarga, releasing. Upasamyamaha, controlling.
controlling.
Astra,
Astra,
weapons.
weapons.
Gramaha,
Gramaha,
all kinds of.
all kinds of.
Cha,
Cha,
and.
and
Bhavata,
Bhavata,
by yourself.
by yourself.
Sikshitaha,
Sikshitaha,
learned.
learned.
Yad,
Yad,
by whose.
by whose.
Anugrahat,
Anugrahat,
mercy of.
mercy of.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
It was by Dronacharya's mercy that you learned the military art of throwing arrows and the confidential art of controlling weapons. Translation with repetition. It was by Dronacharya's mercy
It was by Dronacharya's mercy
that you learned the military art
that you learned the military art
of throwing arrows
of throwing arrows
and the confidential art
and the confidential art
of controlling weapons.
of controlling weapons.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Dhanurveda or military science was taught by Dronacharya with all its confidential secrets of throwing and controlling by Vedic hymns. Gross military science is dependent on material weapons, but finer than that is the art of throwing the arrows saturated with Vedic hymns, which act more effectively than gross material weapons like machine guns or atomic bombs. The control is by Vedic mantras or the transcendental science of sound. It is said in the Ramayana that Maharaj Dasarat, the father of Lord Sri Ram, used to control arrows by sound only. He could pierce his target with his arrow by only hearing the sound without seeing the object. So this is a finer military science than that of the gross material military weapons used nowadays. Arjuna was taught all this, and therefore Draupadi wished that Arjuna feel obliged to Acharya Drona for all these benefits. And in the absence of Dronacharya, his son was his representative. That was the opinion of the good lady Draupadi. It may be argued why Dronacharya, a rigid Brahmana, should be a teacher in military science. But the reply is that a Brahmana should become a teacher regardless of what his department of knowledge is. A learned Brahmana should become a teacher, a priest, and a recipient of charity. A bona fide Brahmana is authorized to accept such professions. Thus ends the wonderful transcendental Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Every day before we chant, every day before we take the Bhagavatam class, we speak about this verse. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. What that verse means is Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. We were born in the darkest of ignorance. Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. The spiritual master, out of his causeless mercy, opened our eyes with his shalaka, with the shalaka or the instrument. The instrument is the instrument of transcendental knowledge. Jnana Anjana Shalakaya. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnana Anjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Imagine you have light which is always available to you, either in the daytime in the form of sunlight or in the form of any tube light or this thing in the night. Light is there, but your eyes are closed. You have the power to see, but somehow if the eyes are closed, you will not be able to see anything. What the spiritual master does is, he gives this knowledge, this vision of transcendental knowledge which helps us to see the world as it is. In this world, you will see people claim that they are self-made. They did it by themselves, by their own efforts. They worked hard. Everything was because of their hard work, because of their planning, because of their meticulously, exercising their choices and the resources, and that is how they became successful. It's not true. Actually, none of us are self-made. We ourselves are not even born on our own volition. Right? We are forced to take birth. In every state of our life, there is mercy which is beyond our conception of mind, intelligence that we can even fathom. Some people who are little intelligent can fathom it to some extent. 99.99% of the people don't even realize that. They say, we did it. And that is how they take another path or a trajectory which is completely different to that of another person who understands the mercy of the Lord and voluntarily surrenders to the Lord. So today's verse, which we are seeing, it talks about just one aspect of, just one particular thing. And if you hear the class which Prabhupada has given, he's saying there is nothing else in this verse except for the fact that mercy of the spiritual master is necessary for us to advance in our spiritual life. The verse goes like this: Sarahasya dhanurvedaha sabisargo upasamyamaha astragramascha bhavata sikshito yadanugrahat. The Vedic knowledge is so vast that there is no end to it. I mean, they are unlimited. And here, especially one division of Vedic knowledge is mentioned called Dhanurvedaha. Some of us, at least, we would have seen the game of archery in some kind of competitive events like Olympics or something, where we see that the target is kept at a far off place, and somebody is trying to shoot the bullseye, right? Even to do that, even though it looks like easily doable, it requires a lot of practice. It cannot be done just like that, that you have a target and you aim it. You have to hold that. You need to have your strength on your shoulders, on your hands. You need to have the skills to aim it the right direction. You have to factor that there is the wind which is blowing, and then keeping all those things in mind, you have to target the bullseye to be successful. That itself is not easy, but here why it is called a rahasya, because it is not just the art of releasing bows and arrows, but it is releasing the arrows by the help of chanting mantras. Sarahasya dhanurvedaha savisarga upasamyamaha. Savisarga. Visarga is one of the word which is used in Bhagavatam as one of the 10 topics. Atra sarga visargascha. Right? The visarga is the secondary creation which is done by Brahma. Here it is meant savisarga, releasing. Creation is an act of expansion. So savisarga upasamyamaha, the act of releasing arrows, the act of creation, the act of doing something with the weapons, upasamyamaha, and controlling it. Not just randomly doing it, but controlling it. Sarahasya dhanurvedaha savisarga upasamyamaha astragramascha bhavata, and astragramascha bhavata, controlling of different weapons. So here Draupadi is telling that this mystery, this is confidential. Sarahasya dhanurvedaha savisargopasamyamaha astragramascha bhavata shikshito yadanugrahat. You became learned. You got to know about this by the mercy of by the mercy of Dronacharya. Sikshito yad anugrahat. So sarahasya dhanurvedaha savisargopasamyamaha astragramascha bhavata sikshito yad anugrahat. Actually, we don't really understand the intricacy. Prabhupada has given some examples in the purport of what exactly this rahasya is. Like he was giving the example of Dasarat Maharaj, who can just hear the words. You don't see the person, you don't see the target, but you release the arrow, and it goes and hits the target just based on this sabda or the sound, sabda vihidi bana. So it goes and penetrates, it goes and hits the target. Imagine there is a bird who's chirping there, something is happening outside, you have no idea. But you release an arrow from here and the arrow goes and hits the target. Very, very confidential. And this is only possible shikshito yad anugrahat, because you received the mercy of Dronacharya. So the translation, there are two things that we can see, which Prabhupada is mentioning. What did Arjuna learn? He learned two things which Prabhupada is saying. Savisarga upasamyamaha. Savisargo, he learned the art of releasing weapons, and astragramaha, and controlling the weapons. The transcendental science of the confidential science of military art and controlling weapons. And how did he learn? Sikshito tadanugrahat. Anugrahat is by the mercy of Dronacharya. The purport, actually Prabhupada is talking about this only important aspect, that sa-rahasyam, confidential subject matter. Interestingly, Bhagavad Gita also talks about the word rahasyam. Anybody knows where is it mentioned? Where is rahasyam in that? Confidential is there, but the word rahasyam. Chapter 9, he is also saying it is the most confidential knowledge, but the word rahasyam. Where is it? Fourth chapter, third verse. What is the third verse of fourth chapter? That is second one. You can open and see. Saevayam mayati adya maya prokta puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hi etaduttamam. What is the rahasya of Bhagavad Gita? What is the confidential subject matter of Bhagavad Gita? Actually, it's a confidential science which can only be understood by the mercy of a spiritual master. Otherwise, it is not possible. Let me give you some example from Bhagavad Gita. In the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about something. Actually, Bhagavad Gita is such a systematic explanation of this transcendental science. One who goes through this, all his doubts about what he has to do, what is the goal of life, how I can achieve, all will be completely clear. So let us take one example from Bhagavad Gita. In the 8th chapter, Krishna actually says that Bhutagramah saevayam bhutva bhutva praliyate ratri agame avasaha partha prabhavanti aharagame. Bhutagramah saevayam bhutva bhutva praliyate. The word gramaha is used here, also it is used astragramaha, right? Astragramascha bhavata, right? Savisargo upasamyamaha astragramascha bhavata. Astragramas means, gramas actually is a plural, like all kinds of people, all kinds of weapons. So bhutagramaha saevayam. Bhutagrama means all the living entities. Bhutagrama saevayam bhutva bhutva praliyate. Again and again there is an annihilation for this. Ratri agame avasaha partha prabhavati aharagame. In the night of Brahma, when Brahma's night happens, all these living entities are withdrawn. They get submerged in the water. Prabhavanti aharagame. When the day of Brahma begins, again, the whole thing manifests. Again, the people come. The translation of that is, again and again the day comes and this host of beings is active, And again the night falls, O Partha, and they are helplessly dissolved. You see, these are all mysteries. These are not some ordinary things that we can understand so easily. That is why these are all revealed in Bhagavad Gita. And this message which are given in Bhagavad Gita are directly spoken by the Lord. He's telling about this, gigantic creation, about our nature, about our transient nature, how temporary this life is. But in our life, we are busy with how to sell some house, कैसे उसको बेचेंगे, उसमें कैसे मुनाफा, profit, or how to some very simple things in our life we are busy. इडली का shape पक्का आएगा कि नहीं, उसमें batter सही डाला, those are all things. नहीं आया, then we get into arguments, altercation. एक वीडियो नहीं हो रहा है, कितना टाइम लगेगा, and we are having this kind of debates. That's how our life goes. Bhutva bhutva praliyate. But there is a bigger picture which is beyond our visible, like our visual power. There is Brahma who's present. In his day, this creation is coming out, and when when his night comes, when he is sleeping, this is Bhutva. Again, they are entering into this, and this process is continuing. Very interestingly, what Krishna says, Parastasmatu bhavo anyo vyakto avyaktat sanatanaha yasa sarveshu bhuteshu nashyatsu na vinashyati. There is a spiritual world which is there beyond this material world. Even in this material world, there are things which we are not able to see, not able to fathom. But beyond this material world, there is another world. Parastasmatu bhavo anyo vyakto vyaktat sanatana. That is eternal. That eternal world, there is no tinge of material energy. In Bhagavatam, in the beginning of the first verse, Krishna's Bhagavatam says, Nirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi. That abode of the Lord, Nirasta kuhakam, there is no presence of material energy. There is no pangs of material existence that we are suffering here. That exists. Parastasmatu bhavo anyo vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha yasa sarveshu bhuteshu nasyatsu na vinashyati. That doesn't go through this annihilation. Yet there is another nature which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. See how complicated, how there are layers and layers of understanding that we need to have to understand who truly we are. But unfortunately, this mystery is not revealed so easily. That requires very important ingredient. That requires only the mercy of spiritual master. Only by the causeless mercy of spiritual master, which we don't deserve. Mercy is something what is the meaning of the word mercy? फेल हुआ है कभी एग्जाम में? ग्रेस मार्क मिला है? किसी को मिलते हुए देखा है? कैसे मिलता है? ग्रेस दे के थोड़ा चढ़ा देते हैं, चलो हो गया बस पास हो जाओ. Like that, in this material world, we are just suffering. We have no clue. We are just busy going through the rut of this material life where we are taking birth, dying, going through the sufferings, again taking birth, dying and going through the suffering, time and again, it is continuing. Obstinacy is there so strongly, I want to enjoy this material world. Somehow, out of some causeless mercy, one pure devotee sees, oh my God, this soul trapped in this body, this dress that we are wearing, somebody is a Mataji, somebody is a Prabhu, somebody is something, this dress that we are wearing, and we are thinking, in this dress I'll be happy, trying to make this dress permanent in this material world. A pure devotee says, no, why are you suffering? Take up to this path. Take up to this path, and because of his mercy, because of his compassion on our present condition, he gives us this path. Please take this. But our unfortunate situation is we still don't wake up. बहुत टाइम है, बाद में देखेंगे. अभी तो क्या 9th grade में, 8th grade में हूँ, बहुत लाइफ बचा है. Like that we think. पकड़े about 8th grade, हम क्या 50 years ही तो है, अभी तो बहुत साल बचा है ना, अभी कौन ले रहा है devotion को. That is why this word mercy is so important. I want to give you one example from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is a purport, one place. Prabhupada is talking something very interesting. Let's see what Prabhupada is trying to say. This is from the second canto, 9th chapter, where Brahma is about to do this creation. So Brahma is telling, such knowledge of the spiritual sky, far above this material sky, and its paraphernalia can be known only by dint of devotional service or bhakti yoga. The power of creation by Lord Brahma was also achieved by bhakti yoga. Power of creation by Brahma was also achieved by bhakti yoga. Brahmaji was bewildered in the matter of creation, and he could not even trace out the source of his own existence. But all this knowledge was fully achieved by him through the medium of bhakti yoga. By bhakti yoga, one can know the Lord, and by knowing the Lord as the Supreme, one is able to know everything else. Yasmin Vijnata Yasmin Vijnatam Sarvamidam Vijnatam Bhavet. If you just know the Supreme Lord, actually everything else is known. By bhakti yoga, one can know the Lord, and by knowing the Lord as the Supreme, one is able to know everything else. One who knows the Supreme knows everything else. That is the version of all Vedas. Even the first spiritual master of the universe was enlightened by the grace of the Lord. Who else can attain the perfect knowledge of everything without the mercy of the Lord? If anyone desires to seek perfect knowledge of everything, he must seek the mercy of the Lord. And there is no other means. Actually, there is no way to understand who the Supreme Lord is unless he reveals himself by his mercy. To seek knowledge on the strength of one's personal attempt is a sheer waste of time. No matter how much endeavor we do, self-made, we try to achieve successful name, fame, do a lot of austerities, this thing, that thing, we cannot know the Lord. The Lord can only be known if he desires, if he decides to reveal himself by his mercy. And that is the version of. And where does he decide to reveal his mercy? If we are engaged in bhakti. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tattvataha. Only by bhakti one can know. But how do we engage in bhakti? We can engage in bhakti by the instruction of a pure devotee spiritual master who knows the intent of the Lord, who knows our position, who knows how to engage us in devotional service. In second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a chapter which comes, very interesting chapter. The name of the chapter is Pure Devotional Service, the Change in Heart. See, if you pay attention to this title, just the title, it is saying pure devotional service, the change in heart. When we are engaging in devotional service, pure devotional service, what is happening? It does not say the change in mind. It does not say the change in intelligence. It says the change in heart. What is the change in heart? What does it mean? Change in heart, hriday mein kya parivartan hota hai? What does that mean? Actually, the Lord is seated in every one of our heart as Paramatma. Where is it mentioned? Sarvasya chaham matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedescha sarver ahameva vedyam vedanta vit sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto. I am there in the heart of every living entity. So the Lord is present in the heart. And even in the other verse in 18th chapter, 61st verse, where Krishna says, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridde se arjuna tishtati Brahmayan yantra rudhani mayaya. Brahmayan sarva bhutani. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridde se arjuna tishtati. The Lord is seated in our heart and he is controlling, he is seeing the wandering of the living entity. Every living entity is trying to wander in this material world. Somebody is trying to going up, going down. He is seeing that. He is controlling that. But he is seated in the heart and he is the one who is doing this. So when we engage in devotional service, what is happening is the desires, those different kind of vasanas that we are having in our heart to enjoy, they get transformed. Because the Lord is there in the heart and he is seeing our intent. When he sees the intent in our heart, and when he sees that there is a strong, sincere desire, then the heart gets changed. See, what is the mechanism of somebody who's taking up to this path of devotion, and how does it change from someone who's there in the outside world, who's trying to do something, live his life or earn his livelihood? What is the difference? What difference happens? The difference is actually devotional service is an act of free will. It cannot be forced on someone. Come and do. I don't have time. I'm busy. We can come up with so many excuses. Why? Because we are not realizing the importance of this devotional service. Why we are not realizing? Because we are busy with something. Our heart, where the Lord is seated, that heart is covered with so many layers of ignorance and desires that I am busy trying to fulfill them. And in that process, what I am trying to do is whatever work I am doing, I want the result of that work to come and I can enjoy. But Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, what does he say in Bhagavad Gita? 2nd chapter, 47th verse, the most famous verse which everybody speaks about. Karmanye vadhikaraste. Karmanye vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Karmanye eva adhikara aste. We have only right to perform the activity. Karmanye vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Don't think of enjoying the fruit of the action. Very interestingly, in Bhagavad Gita actually builds this concept. There are only two choices. One, you are trying to act outside the material world, trying to fulfill all your desires and enjoy the fruits of your action. But Krishna is telling karmanye vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalahetur bhur mate sangostu akarmani. We are not supposed to enjoy the fruits of that action. During Prabhupada's time, there was one disciple of Prabhupada who came and spoke to Prabhupada saying that I want to take sannyas. In those days, there were a lot of young devotees who were taking sannyas. So Prabhupada counter questioned him, saying that, do you know who's a sannyasi? Who's a sannyasi? One who gives up everything. Very interestingly, Prabhupada said the definition of sannyasi from the 6th chapter, 1st verse, anashrita karma phalam. Karyam karma karotiha. What is that verse? So sannyasi cha yogi cha na. The first line is anashrita karma phalam. What does that mean? Ashrita means to take shelter. Anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karotiha. So sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriyaha. Very interesting verse. Anashrita karma phalam. Ashrita is to take shelter. Everybody in this material world wants to take shelter of the fruits of their action. काम मैंने किया ना, 10 आदमी के पास गया, दिखाया प्रॉपर्टी जो भी है, अच्छा है ले लो. Then whatever the result, I am supposed to enjoy that. But anashrita karma phalam, without having the desire to enjoy the fruits of action. So Prabhupada asked him, are you attached to the fruits of your action? He said no. Then Prabhupada said, why do you want to take sannyas? You are already a sannyasi. Anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karotiha sasannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriyaha. So one side is, where you are trying to enjoy the fruits of your action, you are busy doing that thing based on your desires. The result of that is you are constantly being beaten by the modes of material nature, which is acting on us. We are getting sufferings, we are getting miseries. There is janma mrityu jara vyadhi, dukkha dosanu darshanam. We are going through that, yet we don't care. We don't mind. But when there is a change in the heart, when somebody is engaging in devotional service, then the whole thing changes. You are coming out of the cycle of birth and death. You are freeing yourself from the actions, from the reactions of the actions. And this is possible by taking the instruction of a pure devotee spiritual master. Very interestingly, there is a significant point, understanding that devotional service is necessary in our life just by seeing. Okay, maybe I'll bring it to another little bit of conclusion and then say something very important. What is that key to be engaged in devotional service? What is that one thing which will help us that we are always in our life focused on this thing and not getting distracted by that? We will talk about that. But when I was talking about when Krishna begins, because I was telling that Bhagavad Gita is a very systematic explanation of this transcendental science. So it begins in the second chapter where Krishna says, what is the verse? Just now what you spoke. Karmanye vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Ma karma phala heturbhur mate sangostva karmani. Then we went to anashrita karma phalam, right? Now we are in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita in the evening, which is called the most confidential knowledge. Why is it the most confidential? Most confidential, how will I know? This is the most confidential. No? How this mystery is not revealed to me. Why is it called the most confidential? What is that knowledge that, after knowing this? What is special about 9th chapter that Krishna, this is titled as the most confidential? Activity of the soul cannot be understood unless it is revealed by the Lord. Okay. Actually, Prabhupada talks in the purport. You have to see why this is called the most confidential knowledge. Fruit of that activity, what we are getting, where we have to engage. That's a good point. But that is not exactly why this is called the most confidential knowledge. The most confidential knowledge, this is why it is called the most confidential knowledge, is because Krishna affirms his position, who he is, in this chapter. And it is not easy to understand. Some devotees of Shiva, ना? No, Amol, Vaishnava नहीं, मैं बोल रहा हूँ शिवा भक्त जो है ना, उन लोगों को if you just say Krishna, Supreme Lord, they have क्या बोला? Krishna, Shiva, Shivoham, right? Om Shivaya Namaha. We are doing all this thing. Cannot take it. There is a lot of envy in accepting the supremacy of the Lord. There is a story of one man who was apparently a devotee of Shiva. So he was very envious because the moment you are a devotee of Shiva, you don't accept Vishnu or Krishna, right? You think that Shiva is the Supreme Lord. So he was very envious, and he was especially envious to realtors? No, Vaishnavas, because they are wearing Kantimala, chanting Hare Krishna. They are not very happy. So then one day he wanted to get this Shiva mantra from somewhere. So he goes around searching who will give. Because of his nature that he is exhibiting, he is so envious and all, nobody was willing to take him as a disciple. There was one kind Brahmana, one kind Vaishnava who acknowledged, okay, why don't you do some service to me? He didn't say that I will give you the mantra, but why don't you do some service and then we will see. So this envious man got engaged in some devotional service, something he was doing. So one day this man revealed his heart. Shiva mantra chahiye mujhe, de dijiye. So this Brahmana also, out of his kindness, gave him the Shiva mantra to chant. The moment he started chanting Shiva mantra, he thought, now that I have become perfect, now I know this, I don't need to be under the care of this spiritual master. He left from there. And he started getting some mystic powers. The moment you start worshipping Shiva, you get some mystic powers. So he got some mystic powers and he became more proud and puffed up. He said that no Vishnu, no Krishna, nothing is required. One day he was busy worshipping Shiva. At that time his spiritual master happened to be there. That same master who gave him this mantra. And this man, as usual, because of his pride and all, he didn't pay any respect to his spiritual master. At that time, Shiva from the Shivalinga came out and he was about to kill that man, saying that if you don't know how to respect your spiritual master, what is the use of engaging in devotional service to me? So that time, the spiritual master fell at the feet of Shiva, saying that please forgive him. He's ignorant. He doesn't know what he's doing. So, but by the time, Shiva was so furious, he had actually cursed. He had cursed him that, you'll be taking birth as a python and you'll be spending thousands of years of your life in material world in some lower species of life. and he has already cursed that, and now because the spiritual master is asking for forgiveness on his behalf, Shiva's heart melt. He said, okay, one condition I am giving you, that even though you are going to take, you are going to go through this 1,000 species of life, you will not experience the pain of birth and death. You will go through this, but you will not experience the pain of birth and death. And this was all possible because of the prayer of this master, his spiritual master. The point is, when somebody doesn't understand the supremacy of the Lord and busy doing something, somehow or other it makes him more distracted from the understanding of the realization of the absolute truth, and makes him puffed up and go in another direction. But this is still tolerated by our spiritual master. Still tolerated. The spiritual master, the presence of a pure devotee spiritual master is so fortunate. I mean, it is our greatest fortune to have taken shelter of a pure devotee spiritual master who still, despite our anarthas, despite our not wanting to be engaged in devotional service, prays to the Supreme Lord. Somehow this person has come, in your shelter. Please give him the chance to be engaged in devotional service. Of course, the story in this thing is, he, after 1,000 years of his life, he becomes a devotee of Vaishnava, and he has written wonderful commentaries in Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, but that's a different thing. Coming back to the important thing of engaging in devotional service, there is one key which will make the whole difference in life. And that one key is given in this verse. It's a very beautiful verse of Bhagavatam. It says, Srijami tapasi vedam, grasami tapasa punaha, bibhrami tapasa viswam, viryam me duscharam tapaha. So the translation is, I create this cosmos by such penance, I maintain it by the same energy, and I withdraw it all by the same energy. Therefore the potency is penance only. This is Brahma who is saying how he is able to create, maintain, and how he is able to withdraw. And he's telling the secret of creation, maintenance, and withdrawing is penance only. Therefore the potency is penance only. If you really want to do something very big in life, the clue or the secret behind that success is austerity, tapas, penance. Srijami tapasi vedam. Tapas is very important. In the purport, Prabhupada reveals something very powerful, very striking. What does Prabhupada reveal? In executing penance, one must be determined to return home back to Godhead, and must decide to undergo all types of tribulations for that end. First thing is, in executing penance, one must be determined to return home back to Godhead. That determination, that goal, that clarity is very important, and must decide to undergo all types of tribulations for that end. I have to go back home, back to Godhead at the end of this life. I'm not meant to just live life, casually, aram se, kabhi kiya manaunga. No, I have to have that strong determination, that goal. Even for material prosperity and name and fame, one has to undergo severe types of penances. Otherwise, no one can become an important figure in this material world. For material prosperity, name and fame, you go and see anyone, they do so much of hard work. Somebody gets up early in the morning, travels to different places, takes a lot of austerities. Maybe they skip their breakfast, lunch and dinner. Why? They do all this austerity to achieve material success. Even for material prosperity, name and fame, one has to undergo severe types of penances. Otherwise, it is not possible. Why then should there not be severe types of penances for the perfection of devotional service? This is a very important thing. Why should not be? Why should we think that going back home, back to Godhead is so easy? Just because we have been introduced to this process of devotional service, we have been given this facility to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. If you see the first slide that we see in the beginning of our soulful japa, I thank Srila Prabhupada for giving me this facility thousands of times. I bow down to him. Actually, we don't know how fortunate we are that we've been given this facility to chant this Hare Krishna mantra. This is coming in our tongue. Extremely rare. Why should we take it lightly? Why then should there not be severe types of penances for the perfection of devotional service? Prabhupada makes a statement here, very powerful statement. An easy-going life and attainment of perfection in transcendental realization cannot go together. Easy going life मतलब मैं काम करूँगा 9 to 4, ठीक है, उसके बाद टाइम मिला तो डिवोशनल सर्विस करूँगा, नहीं मिला, ये हफ्ता चला गया. An easy going life and attainment of perfection and transcendental realization cannot go together. Not that somebody is harsh on you. Understand what is the goal that you are trying to achieve. You may say that I have got so many problems, I am a grahastha, I am a this thing, I am a that thing. I may come up with so many excuses. But ultimately, the Lord is not going to see how many excuses you give. He is going to see how hard did you try. Did you try enough or not? Prabhupada is writing, the Lord is more clever than any living entity. Therefore, he wants to see how painstaking the devotee is in devotional service. You can't fool, you can't cheat the Lord. है ना, मैं अभी तो तिलक लगाना चालू कर दिया हूँ. अंदर कुछ भी हो, क्या चल रहा है वो, it doesn't matter. मैं तिलक लगा रहा हूँ, आ रहा हूँ. The Lord is very clever. He's seeing how much really we are sincere in the heart. How painstaking are we? The Lord is more clever than any living entity. Therefore, he wants to see how painstaking the devotee is in devotional service. The order, now the next two lines, Prabhupada reveals a very powerful secret. The order is received from the Lord either directly or through the bona fide spiritual master. And to execute that order, however painstaking, is the severe type of penance. The order is actually coming from the spiritual master. Whatever order we are receiving to do something, it is directly coming from the bona fide spiritual master. And to execute that order, however painstaking, is the severe type of penance. One who follows this principle rigidly is sure to achieve success in attaining the Lord's mercy. If you are looking for Lord's mercy to progress in spiritual life, to know about him, because it's only by Lord's mercy that Lord reveals himself, then one has to execute the order of the spiritual master, however painstaking. That is a severe type of penance. Very interestingly, actually, if you look for example, Prabhupada's own life is always a great example of this. Does anybody know which year Prabhupada took sannyas? 1940? No. 1944 Prabhupada started? Correct. Back to Godhead magazine. No. 1922 he met his spiritual master. 1936 Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur passed away. 1933 he took initiation. 1959 Prabhupada took sannyas. So Prabhupada, before taking sannyas, was in which place? Delhi, and then he was in Vrindavan. He was living in Vrindavan. In which temple? Radha Damodar temple was later. Radha Damodar temple is very famous, people know about it. 1962 to 1965 Prabhupada was in Radha Damodar temple. Before that? How much we know about Prabhupada? He was in Vamsi Gopal temple. He lived there for 6 years. Something around 1952 to 58 or something. Or maybe 1954 to 1960, something like that. 1954 to 1960. Though he left his Grihastha ashram, he was in Vrindavan. Initially he was struggling. 6 years he lived in Vamsi Gopal temple. Even after getting sannyas, he was in Vamsi Gopal temple for some time. And then he moved to Radha Damodar temple. You know, the Radha Raman temple that we are all familiar with. We had the Prakatya Divas, Radha Raman's appearance day, which happens after, when does it happen? One day after Narasimha Jayanti. Right, so that is the day when Radha Raman appeared. Now the present Goswamis who are there worshipping Radha Raman, their father, he was actually a contemporary of Srila Prabhupada, or has seen Prabhupada. There is one Vyasa Puja celebration in Vrindavan Chandrodaya Mandir of 2005 or 6, where the present Goswamis of Radharaman temple are talking about Srila Prabhupada, because their father has seen Srila Prabhupada. Very interesting conversation. You can see that's there in the YouTube video, I think, in one of the old videos of Vrindavan Chandrodaya Mandir. They were talking about the memory of his father about Srila Prabhupada. And they were saying, very interesting, I mean, they are also old people now. They were saying that Srila Prabhupada in those days, when he was staying in Vamsi Gopal temple, had a cycle, had a bicycle. And that bicycle was a rickety one. It was making a lot of noise. You know, sometimes those old bicycles, you would have seen, those of you, maybe you would have not seen any bicycle like, you know, those kind of you go and it makes noise. If it is not properly oiled or something, you know, the chain, it makes noise. Who's doing the tuck tuck? Yeah, Amol? Oh, you? Okay, Seshu, yeah. Sound effect is very important. So that kind of noise used to come. And then these two, sons of the that old man who was there as contemporary of Srila Prabhupada, they say that Prabhupada, their father was actually a subscriber of Back to Godhead magazine. And every month, without fail, Prabhupada would come in that cycle. And because of that sound of that cycle, that kadr, whatever you're doing, it comes. These two children will know that Prabhupada has come and they'll get two paisa or something and give and take that magazine. This used to happen every month. Who is this person? Srila Prabhupada. If you look at his previous life as a Grihastha, he had a big car. Very prosperous. And what is he doing? After sannyas, staying in a place in Vamsi Gopal temple, every single month for 2 paisa, he's coming and distributing this Back to Godhead magazine. That penance is required. It is not an easy life. An easygoing life and attainment of perfection and transcendental realization cannot go together. Penance doesn't mean that we have to find some old cycle and go and do this. I have to be determined to follow the orders of the spiritual master, however painstaking it is. And when somebody does that, is sure to achieve success in attaining the Lord's mercy. Choice is ours. The path is, we have to choose the path. And in this path, if we have to remain steadfast, we need the mercy of spiritual master. Without that, it is not possible. How do we get the mercy of the spiritual master? By becoming sincere in following his order. I will stop here and see if you have any questions or comments. Okay, let's take this one verse and then we will close. Does anybody know this verse? Is it familiar? This is Brahma's prayer, right? Very beautiful prayer. We will chant this prayer and see if you have any questions or comments. It's a very wonderful prayer. Brahma is praying, Jnane prayasam udapasya namanta eva. Jivanti sanmukharitam bhavadiya vartam. Sthane sthita shrutigatam tanuman manobhir. Ye prayaso ajito jito piyasitais trilokyam. Very, very powerful prayer. Actually, if this is the sum and substance where eha bahya ar kaharaya, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was rejecting everything. The moment Ramananda Raya speaks about this verse, he says, this is correct. This is the right thing. What is it that Brahma is saying here? Jnane prayasam udapasya namanta eva. Jnane prayasam, this endeavor to acquire knowledge or to know the Supreme Lord or the Supreme Absolute Truth by our own endeavor, like yesterday's verse that we were having in Bhagavad Gita, where it was talking about that jnana and doing jnana and yajna. Jnane prayasam udapasya. Brahma is telling, give it up completely. Jnane prayasam udapasya namanta eva. Just bow down before the Lord. Jivanti sanmukharitam bhavadiya vartam. This word sanmukharitam is very beautiful. Sanmukharitam. Sun is actually Sat. Sat means the devotees of the Lord. Satam prangan mama vijaya samvido. Or the second Bhagavatam, which is saying that dharma projita kaitavo atro paramo nirmat saranam satam. That satam is referring to devotees. So jivanti sanmukharitam bhavadiya vartam. Jivanti, we become completely engladdened, enlivened. Sanmukharitam, From the mouth of a devotee, when we hear Bhavadiya Vartam, your glories and your transcendental pastimes and activities, when we hear, that itself is the success. Sthane sthita shrutigatam. Just stay in whichever position you are. Hear profusely. If you want to change those, directions of your life, where all these vasanas are covering the supreme soul, the super soul who is there in the heart. If you want that to go completely, you have to hear this message profusely. That can penetrate the layers of ignorance and can touch the soul. Otherwise, it is not possible. Sthane sthita shrutigatam tanuvan manobhir ye prayaso ajito jito piyasita strilokyam. Ajita, unconquerable Lord, the Lord who is not easily revealed. Maya javanika channam agyadhokshajam avyayam nalakshase mudhadrisha nato natya dharo yatha. He is not easily seen. He cannot be seen. Maya javanika, because there is a curtain. Maya javanika, curtain of external energy, very strong to penetrate that. But this word, sanmukharitam bhavadiya vartam, it can penetrate that Maya javanika and can touch the soul. That is how the Supreme Soul can be revealed in our heart. Our vasanas will change, our direction will change, we will be engaged in devotional service. And we can remain engaged in devotional service with that strong determination by the mercy of pure devotee spiritual master. Any questions, any comments?
Hare Krishna. I didn't get the meaning of potence is penance.
Which one?
The potency is the penance.
Potency is the penance.
Yeah.
You didn't get the meaning of that. Yeah, so basically the Prabhupada has explained that very nicely in the purport, right? If you want to become successful in life, right, you need to do some austerity. You need to do that hard work. Without that hard work, you cannot achieve success, even in the material realm. What to speak about the spiritual world, where the example of Brahma was given, he says that the purity lies in that austerity. Because of that austerity, I am able to create, maintain and withdraw this material energy. Because of that tapas, he is able to do this. And Prabhupada is saying, in our life, to remain engaged in devotional service, the tapas that is required is to follow the instruction of the spiritual master. That tapas, if we are very sincerely following, whatever the order is given by the spiritual master, the purity will be remaining and we can remain in the devotional service.
Yeah. I was confused with why does Brahma say that?
Yeah, so that chapter is actually about the creation of the Lord. Creation doesn't happen so easily. Creation is a very complicated thing. He was not able to fathom how to do this creation. So he heard this word tapas, tapa, the 16th and the 21st syllable together. Tapa, twice. And he thought that I have to do. So thousands of years of penance he did to get this knowledge. What this verse is telling is, this knowledge you can't acquire by your own efforts. It has to be revealed in the heart. It will be revealed only by tapas. So, and the tapas for us is not that we have to sit in, sacrifice or this kind of penance for thousands of years. We have to just follow the orders of the spiritual masters very determined way. That's why Prabhupada is saying an easy-going life and transcendental realization do not go hand in hand. If you really want to have transcendental realization, you should be prepared. Even if it is painstaking, this is an order given by my spiritual master, I must execute it. That is where the transcendental realization comes. Any other question? I wanted to go to the 9th chapter to conclude something in that Bhagavad Gita, but anyway, I got a little distracted. जय ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की श्रील